So we are back, episode 3 of Rings of Power Season 2. At the time of recording this, the 4th episode was released. And I have watched it, but I will be doing a review of that later. So for now, we're gonna get into episode 3. I do apologize for the different camera, as old one broke randomly while streaming, so still waiting for the replacement one. This is currently just a temporary one, so I apologize if you find the quality a little bit lacking in that regard. But yeah, so let's break down the next episode. So we finally get to go back to the Númenóreans and Elendil and Isildur. So since the fallout of the previous fight at the end of Season 1, and Mordor erupting and essentially causing the Númenóreans to lose, they are now going back home. They are tired, they are weary, they are sad for their fallen kin, and they're just going to go back home. Elendil does not want to go home. He wants to look for his son, Isildur, but everyone's telling him he can't really. He's lost. It's time to move on. Elendil wants to bring Isildur's horse with him, but the horse won't leave. The horse only listens to Isildur, so they decide to let the horse go. I wanted to point out quickly that I don't know if Amazon has mentioned Isildur's brother yet. We've seen his sister, and we see her multiple times throughout the throughout this episode, throughout the previous season. But I don't think they've ever mentioned his brother. If they did, it was maybe like a throwaway line in episode 1. But I just wanted to point that out, that Isildur has a brother named Anorian, and that's a really important brother, by the way. So odd that we haven't seen him yet, but hopefully we will later. Anyways, so we get the horse running away, essentially trying to track down Isildur, and we get a fun little moment with the horse, which I feel is also very Tolkien-like. And I think is probably the second moment for me that has made this show feel so much like Tolkien. The first one being Gil-galad's song, and this moment here with the horse, where the horse almost becomes a character now, and is no longer just an animal, but is now a character. And so the horse gets ambushed by orcs. Horse outsmarts the orcs and ends up killing one, wounding another, and runs off into a forest that the orcs don't chase because it's the dark forest. And it's revealed that this dark forest is actually a spider's lair, and this is where Isildur is. Turns out Isildur was captured by Shelob, and it is confirmed it is Shelob, baby Shelob. So that's kind of fun. The fight sequence I thought was kind of funny in that it looked very similar to the Sam's fight with Shelob in Return of the King. Shelob tries to bite Sam, and Sam tries to fight back the pincers before getting bitten. Sam also stabs Shelob in the head or the eye. Same thing happens with Isildur here, where Isildur tries to hold back pincers, but it's a baby Shelob, so I feel like Isildur could just rip the pincers apart, or at least push back with more strength. They did establish that Shelob just ripped an orc's skull in half, so maybe there's some strength there. But I don't know, it felt a little bit weird with Shelob being so small. And then Isildur stabs Shelob in the face or an eye, and Shelob does the full little covering of the eyes again and crawling away in pain. I'm worried that this takes away, though, from Sam a little bit. Not that they copied it from what Peter Jackson did, but more of Sam's character. Sam encountering Shelob and effectively like defeating Shelob, and that he survived the encounter and was able to chase her away, is a massive feat. Not only for a hobbit, but just for like a character in general. No one has survived an encounter with Shelob. No one has fought Shelob and lived to tell the tale. And this is mentioned in the books with Gandalf talking to Sam about his journey and what they went through, and he mentions a spider, and Gandalf's like, wait, that's Shelob. I'm like, oh, yeah, that's Shelob. I fought Shelob and I won. And that just, it adds to this character, and Gandalf congratulates Sam on this incredible feat because it is incredible. And it's something that was never done before. So I feel like, in a weird way, this kind of takes away from that encounter. I'm not saying that it really does that, but it's just, I don't know. It did kind of cross my mind. And it's kind of, I hope that they just now leave Shelob alone and they don't go back to it. And it's not like this Isildur has this revenge against Shelob, and like in season 3 or 4 or whatever, comes back and tries to hunt down Shelob, and it makes this weird rivalry. I really don't want that, because if they go to that extent, then I definitely think it takes away from Sam's accomplishments. And the fact that also Sam was able to physically like stab Shelob and draw blood, it was with Sting, also just adds to this achievement, because that's, again, something that wasn't really done before. So having them do that through Isildur is just, I don't know. It's just something I thought about and thought it was worth mentioning. But after that, Isildur leaves. It gets out fine thanks to his horse. And then we get to Numenor. And we kind of see Numenor now in a state of uneasiness. They're very upset with the choices that the Queen made about going to Middle-earth and going to war. There's all these dead soldiers that are returning. Families are upset to the point where one slaps the Queen, and they have this kind of bonding moment of lost loved ones, and like, I understand what you're going through. I'm sorry that this happened, kind of thing. So the Queen's trying to build this relationship, but Pharazôn in the shadows is still rallying supporters to his side and is ready to kind of like make his move to take ownership of Numenor, to rule over Numenor, and kind of insert himself as king, which is what he did in the books. Maybe not to the same extent. I think he was technically next in line, and then he marries Miriel, I think, in the books or something like that, but he was the ruler, not her. And then he led Numenor astray. It wasn't like a rivalry there that's kind of being portrayed here in the show. I don't remember those exact details perfectly, but I think it's something like that. Regardless, Pharazôn's in the shadows making moves to overthrow the Queen. And he's trying to at least, I think, help the Queen. He meets her the night before her coronation, where she's supposed to become queen, because technically she's queen regent. So now her coronation is going to be the following day, where she's then given the crown and is now looked at as Queen of Numenor. He goes to her the night before with 2 dresses, one white, one red. He says the red one represents like Numenor's future, and the white one represents Numenor's past. She wants the white one because it reminds her of her father, and it's the same color that her father wore when he became king. And he says, well, that's the old Numenor. We need a new Numenor. We need to inspire the people and take control and represent something new and represent change. And that's what I believe the red one does. But she says no, and this kind of upsets him, but whatever. I actually thought that later when we see the dress, I actually thought because she was blind, he was going to play a trick on her and say, oh, yes, I picked you the dress you wanted, but it's actually the red one. I thought that for a second. It didn't end up happening, but I thought it could have happened. It would have been, I don't know, kind of funny, I guess. Then we have a little scene in a tavern in Numenor where Isildur's sister, can't remember her name, Farazan and some random lord from northern Numenor. They're discussing again the people being upset that new leadership needs to step in. There's some people that are willing to kind of overthrow the queen, but there's not enough. However, Isildur's sister reveals that she thinks she has an idea on how to gain more supporters, and this is, of course, through the Palantir that she found in the first season. And this kind of goes back to I don't know where this hate towards the elves, in the context of the show, comes from. I understand that in the books, eventually, through the manipulation of Sauron and the men of Numenor growing more distant from the elves, that they grew this distaste for the elves because the elves live longer or forever, and Numenor doesn't get that. They live long, but not forever. So they kind of felt jealous a little bit, and then with Sauron arriving, he kind of stirs the pot a little bit more, creates more chaos and distrust, and that leads to a bunch of events. That context is missing from the show specifically. We know that the Numenor hates the elves, but we don't really know why, especially because it's so recent to when they actually worked together, and Elrond's brother was mentioned in helping build Numenor and everything. So we're still really close to all of these events where men and elves fought with each other. So it's really weird that all of a sudden Numenor hates the elves with this lack of context. And so that's why they don't like the Palantir, though, is because they don't like the elves, and this is an elvish tool or an elvish artifact. We can't trust the elves. So through this idea that Isildur's sister has, she will reveal the Palantir, and this will be a way to gain more supporters. And hopefully they can overthrow the queen that way, and that's kind of their plan. Then we get to Adar and the orcs, and we get something that's a little bit controversial among the community.
We have a home. Must we go to war again?
Orcs really want to now just live in peace. Sauron is no longer here, and they just kind of want to live their happy life. No more fighting, no more taking, just live their life. But Adar tries to tell the orcs that they aren't safe so long as there's maybe even a hint that Sauron is alive. So he's saying that the orcs should go through with Adar and Halbrand's plan of going to war against the elves, because that's where Sauron is. You can defeat Sauron there, then you can have your happiness.
You told me Sauron was dead. Let us leave him that way. There are some dangers in this world about which it is a father's burden to know, and a son's burden to trust. Trust me, my son.
This has caused some debate, and has also brought some thoughts for myself as well. Orcs were bred for war. That was their purpose. And in Tolkien's works, they are the pure embodiment of evil. They have no empathy. They have no compassion for the other races. They hate everyone and everything, to the extent of they even hate each other and causes infighting all the time. They constantly fight, and like Treebeard says, gnawing, hacking, breaking, biting, burning, or whatever the line is. And they pillage and burn everything. They love war, they love fighting. So to see these orcs not want to do that is a little bit weird to me. Especially because they're the kind of the only orcs that are in Middle-earth right now. And to further that, they've now introduced orc families. Orcs have been created in many ways. They're started as elves, and they were corrupted and twisted by both Morgoth and Sauron, and kind of continuously through that process creating a large army. Then there's just through the process of like dark magic and corruption and all of that creates orcs, just like what Saruman was doing with his Uruk-hai, and you see them like pulling them out of the mud essentially. So orcs are created that way. Then there's also the implications of pillage and burning. They take prisoners, they take slaves, and they use these slaves to breed. So that's an interpretation. There was also references, though, that Tolkien stated that orcs bred no differently than humans and elves. But it's about that, how they multiplied, right? So was there female orcs, and did they breed the same way? Or was it more of they took slaves and bred that way? It's up for interpretation. I get it. It's just when there's already established works like Peter Jackson's movies, and we see how the orcs act, and we see what they want to achieve, it's hard to take in this information of the orcs want just a happy life for their families, which we've never seen before. We've never seen orc families, we've never seen orc children. So it's just kind of weird and hard to digest. And they're kind of, I get that Amazon wants to push like this, not all evil is good and not all good is, or not all evil is evil. Some evil is good and not all good is pure good. Some good can be evil. Like, I get that contrast and that concept that they're trying to push, but it just, I don't know. I don't think it's working right now. I think it's being done in a really poor way. There are orcs that are referenced, and for the sake of argument, they're just called Eastern orcs. And these orcs did hate Sauron. Well, they didn't hate Sauron, but they laughed at Sauron. So these Eastern orcs worked with Morgoth, fought in the War of Wrath, and when Morgoth lost, Sauron fled, and these orcs fled. When Sauron was ready to regain power, he went to the orcs, as you do, but they didn't respect Sauron enough. They laughed at him, and they said that he was no Morgoth. You're not going to rule us. We're bigger, we're badder. Because they weren't just normal orcs that we've seen. They're more like, I guess you could say they're more closer to like Azog or Bolg. They're more like Gundabad-like orcs. They just look bigger. So they weren't really scared of Sauron, and they kind of just laughed at him. But they didn't necessarily hate him. Just, nah, we don't need to work for you. We'll do our own thing. Sauron, of course, could have probably killed them or killed some of them to force the others into play. But he didn't do that. He needed them for his army. So he needed to convince them. So that's kind of what he did in the books, is he kind of like was able to find a way to convince these orcs to prove himself, tell them their plans and all this stuff. And that eventually like kind of coerced the orcs to join his side. But then there's the argument of, well, once he also got the One Ring, he like mind controls all the orcs and he bends them to their will. But you don't really see that in Peter Jackson's movies. It seems like more of like a choice, right? It's they want to burn, they want to pillage, they want to go to war, they want to see all the races of Middle-earth fall beneath their feet, and they hate everyone. So there's definitely a lot of conflict within the Lord of the Rings community about what's going on, and I don't think it's being shown as good as it could in the show. I think both sides of the argument are correct in that orcs want war and they just want to be with Sauron because they hate everyone else. Orcs are forced to work for Sauron, so they don't really have much choice, and they just want to live kind of their own life. There's elements to both sides that I think are correct, but I just think that what's happening in the show isn't quite it. I think it's missing a lot of context that the viewers need. So moving on from that, we get now the dwarves arriving to Eregion under the summons of Celebrimbor to learn about these rings. So dwarves are desperate, they're running out of food, they're running out of time, they hear that the elves are better, that Celebrimbor made these rings. So perhaps if dwarven rings were made, then Khazad-dûm would be safe. Durin doesn't trust Annatar, and I kind of like that. It's another one of those, not everyone was so easily influenced by Annatar, not everyone believed him, because that's, in the case of the books, the elves trusted him to start, but then they started to catch on to his ways and started to believe him less and less. So I like that we have a character that also doesn't trust him. And immediately is like, who are you? Elrond has never talked about you. What you're saying to me isn't landing, and I don't trust what you're saying, Annatar. So I really like that from Durin. And I think it also just shows the dwarf character, their stubbornness, and they're not so easily corrupted, because they're not. Dwarves weren't easily corrupted by magic and by words. They were very stubborn, and greed is what drove them, not necessarily words or magic. Durin then says that he'll talk to his father after their big dispute from the first season. They'll try, maybe this, it's better for the dwarves if they have a ring so that they can survive, right? Whether or not Durin really wants to talk to his father is not important, is kind of what Disa is trying to convince him. Annatar does some more manipulation with Celebrimbor of like, we need to hurry with these rings. If we don't, Gil-galad may shut you down, and he'll take all the credit. So you need to talk to Gil-galad, or you need to talk to the dwarves. We need to make these rings now. So there's just some manipulation going on there, which is just nice to see. Then we're back with Isildur, and he comes across a caravan where he meets. Don't remember her name. I never remember these characters' names, and I do apologize for that. But he meets we'll call her someone of the someone of the South, because I think she's part of like the Southlands at the time before Adar and everything. She could be from like the lands of Gondor, maybe. But this is supposed to be who Isildur marries later. And so we've got a love interest. The two of them together come across another caravan, which looks a little bit more suspicious, and it's a trap. And it's run. They are ambushed by wildmen that follow Adar, and it looks like they're going to be overwhelmed. But Arondir from season 1 reveals himself, saves Isildur, and Estrid. I think it's Estrid. Arondir saves Isildur, and Estrid says, I'm going to town. If you want to go save your horse, you can, but I have other means and to attend to. And we learn that their name was Bronwyn. Bronwyn has passed, and we're at her funeral. It wasn't a shock in terms of she's dead, and that the actress of Bronwyn left the show after season 1 and was not coming back. So rather than recasting her, they decided to just kill her off. However, in the context of the world, it's a little bit jarring and unexpected, because I went back to season 1, and the last time we saw Bronwyn is when they were in essentially like a medic tent after the battle and Mount Doom exploding and all that. She's got a bandage over her shoulder/chest where she was shot. But she was up and around, she was healing people, she was hugging Theo and Arondir. And that was literally the last time we saw her. It cut from her to essentially Auragian and the revealing of Sauron and all that. So to go from her in that state to we're at her funeral was a little bit jarring and unexpected in that way. I knew she wasn't going to be in the show, but I thought they would at least found a way to kind of transition her out. But they kind of just, boom, she's dead. And the only context we get is that orc poison killed her. She was poisoned by the arrow. Arondir couldn't save her. He tried, and she just died. This is, of course, has created more conflict between Arondir and Theo, which is, it's kind of, I get it, but also like they had such a great bond in the first season, so to now all of a sudden like forcefully put stress on the relationship and make them kind of hate each other again is a little bit weird, but whatever. I get it. It's stressful for Theo and for Arondir. And it's one of the stories that I know a lot of people actually liked. It was one of those, this is a story that Amazon has created for themselves or like for their own story, and it works fine. Like it wasn't necessarily bad by any means. So to see that part go is kind of sad, and I know for a lot of people, and that's fair. That's fair. Durin and Prince Durin and King Durin have their bonding session. They finally make up. They apologize to each other. We need to make amends so that the dwarves of Khazad-dûm can live on. Celebrimbor has these rings. It could really help out. So they make up and things are better. Back with Isildur, Arondir, and Theo and whatnot, we learn that these wild men of the area that are still branded by Adar live in the forest nearby. So Isildur wants his horse, so he's going to go out tonight and look for him. Theo wants to come with him. Isildur has a bonding moment with Estrid, where we learn more about his past life and how his mother died, and he reveals the truth that he believes it's his fault. She came out and saved him from drowning. In return, she drowned herself, and he never told anyone that. He just said that his mother drowned to the sea. This is a moment, though, of you could show something and not tell it. But Amazon, with Rings of Power, really likes telling you things and not showing you things. So if any time someone says, like, what's an example of telling and not showing, you could mention this scene, because it's all it is Isildur sitting there at the campfire with Estrid, telling this story, where it could easily transition into a flashback with maybe a little bit of narration, but it could just be fade from Isildur's face to a beach when he's a kid, playing in the water and the water dragging him down, and a woman running out to the ocean. He calls out for mom. Now we know it's his mom, and she saves him, but then she's in return dragged into the ocean and drowns. And then from there it could fade back to like kind of the ending of Isildur's monologue, so to speak, of I never told anyone the truth. I just said that she drowned, but she saved me in reality. So that's just, it's simple, it's subtle, but it improves the story a lot. And I think Amazon could look into doing that a lot more, because a lot of the show, both season 1 and season 2, are full of these telling moments, and they don't show a lot. They do that with the cult and the Dark Wizard in the deserts of Rhûn, where they keep talking about knowing Sauron and knowing what he's like, but why don't they just show us like Sauron handing a letter to someone and this letter going to the Dark Wizard, or the Dark Wizard encountering Sauron in the wild or something like that. Just show us something for more context instead of just telling us things. It just improves the quality of the show, and I feel, in my opinion. It really adds to it. But as at the end of telling this story, Theo makes a bond with Isildur because, of course, he just lost his mom, so he feels more connected to Isildur. But as the two of them leave to go save the horse, Estrid grabs this blade that she was trying to heat up in the fire before Isildur showed up, and it's revealed that she actually has the symbol of Adar on her back, and she burns it, revealing that is she still working for Adar? Is she trying to hide it? We don't really know. Excuse me. And we'll just have to find out later. Then we get to Isildur finding his horse in the woods. It was captured by these wild men, and while he's trying to save his horse, moving trees are heard in the distance, and screaming and calling out. An axe is thrown out of the darkness, and everyone's panicking and running away. Theo runs away and gets picked up by something. We all know it's most definitely Ents, because we saw them in the trailer. But so Theo gets picked up, and then we move on to Numenor, where it's the Queen's coronation, and she's dressed in white. This upsets Pharazôn still, and everything seems to be going fine until right before she puts on the crown, Isildur's sister steps out with the Palantir and says, "Wait, our queen is basically a fraud. She's been taking orders from this Palantir." And everyone's in shock and causes panic. People are throwing things. Guards are Sparta kicking civilians downstairs, which was just really funny. And there's all this chaos. And then all of a sudden, an eagle makes an appearance, which is super cool to see. The eagles again. We love the eagles. I just wish that they made the eagles talk. Not to say that there isn't an opportunity for that later, but a lot of people don't know that the eagles can actually talk. They never did in Peter Jackson's movies, and I think it would have been a great opportunity to show them talk here. But nope, the eagle just arrives and is just squawking, and then Pharazôn decides to use this moment as, oh, the eagles are actually here for me, because I'm the true ruler of Numenor, or I should be at least. So I'm going to walk up to the eagle and be the one accepting their presence. And then this kind of leads to the people cheering Pharazôn, and then the eagle squawking some more and flying off. This was a little bit weird to me, because I feel like the eagles, well, one, could talk and they could sort out the issue that's happening. And two, I feel like they can sense kind of, maybe not necessarily evil, but ill intent. Right? A lot of animals can. The eagles are just heightened in that way. So they should be able to sense Pharazôn's ill intent and what his plans for Numenor, and maybe he's a little bit sketchy and not who he says he is and what he wants to do. So I feel like there could have been something there, but they just didn't play with it, and I thought that was a little bit weird, especially because my interpretation was, oh, the eagle is here. No, this is for the queen, because this is her coronation. But then it was twisted into, oh no, it's here for Pharazôn. So I still don't quite understand the intentions of Amazon behind this. I don't know if it was supposed to be for Miriel, but then they're just using the eagle's arrival as a way to show that Pharazôn's gaining power now and tricking everyone. I don't know. It felt a little bit weird. And then we finally get to the forging of the next rings. They are making these 7 dwarf rings, and to further emphasize that these rings are corrupted, but not the other ones, we have Sauron take a chunk of mithril, hold on to it for a second, and drop it into the boiling pot. And to further emphasize, these ones are corrupted. So he touched them, they're corrupted, and that's where the episode ends. So, as of the episode that came out on the 5th, episode 4, we will be halfway through the season. There's still a lot that I feel like could happen. There's still a lot that I'm worried about. I'm worried about what happens with Eregion, because in the books, it's Sauron arriving with an army, not Adar, and Sauron's arriving with the One Ring. The One Ring isn't made yet, and Sauron's leading this army and kind of massacring everyone that stands in his way in Eregion, to the extent of even fighting the dwarves who help arrive, and the dwarves come with elves from Lothlorien, which hasn't been established yet, and then Elrond comes in with an army from the north as well. So there's still potential for a big epic battle, but it's not going to be the same, and I'm kind of, that upsets me, and that it would be so cool to finally see Sauron in like the height of his power, in his big metal armor, wielding mace and the One Ring, and just destroying everything. But we're not going to get that here. And I don't know if we're ever going to get that, which is kind of upsetting. In that this is kind of the biggest battle that the elves and Sauron have, aside from the battle of the last alliance kind of thing in Dagorlad and Mordor and all that. So we'll see Sauron there if we ever even get to that point. But this is just an opportunity that they had to show that kind of stuff, and they just didn't, and that just makes me sad, because it should be Sauron leading this battle, not Adar. But we'll see how it goes. We still have 5 episodes left, and we'll have to play it out. I still really want Galadriel's daughter. I want Celeborn. We need more on the Elven rings, and I don't know. There's a lot of small things here and there, like Celeborn being older than Galadriel, but Galadriel's supposed to be the oldest elf, is just really weird still to me. And I don't know. They focus so much on trying to remind us what Peter Jackson's movies were, but then any opportunity they have to use their own stories or to show even what Tolkien wrote and not what Peter Jackson wrote, they just go back to Peter Jackson. They'd rather keep reminding us of Peter Jackson's dialogues and Peter Jackson's stories rather than tell us more of their own or tell us what actually happened in the books. And it just bothers me. The show's better. The episode 3 was a lot better pace-wise, so I hope it continues this way. I really hope we don't hit episode 4 and it just stops, because that's what happened last season, where we got halfway through the season and then it just like all momentum stopped. So I'll have to see how the next one goes, and we'll continue there. So thank you for watching. I appreciate all your guys' points of views. Come join the live streams on Saturdays at 2 p.m. Mountain Time, where we discuss the previous week's episode. So this Saturday on the 7th, we'll be discussing episode 4. So come around, hang around for that. If not, thanks for watching. Leave a like. If you didn't like it, tell me why. And I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.